Why? Why did Adolf Hitler, leader of one of the most advanced nations on Earth, declare war on an entire people? What drove a modern state to unleash industrialized extermination on millions of men, women, and children? Behind the slogans, the hatred, and the propaganda lies a dark synthesis of ideology, fear, and obsession that reshaped the course of human history. And to understand it, we must go back to the beginning. Before the camps, before the speeches, to the mind of a man and the myths that made him. The persecution of the Jews under Adolf Hitler was not an accident of war. It was the result of decades, centuries of poisonous ideas that fused ancient religious prejudice with modern pseudoscience and political manipulation. Anti-Semitism was not born in Germany. It had long existed across Europe. But in the years following the First World War, it found its most lethal form in a man who transformed hatred into policy and policy into genocide. To understand Hitler's war on the Jews, one must begin with his own world, the decaying Austro-Hungarian Empire at the turn of the 20th century. Vienna, the city where the young Adolf spent his formative years, was a paradox of beauty and bitterness. It was a city of art and intellect, home to Freud, Mahler, and Klimt, but also a city rife with political extremism and racial nationalism. In the newspapers, Jewish financiers were accused of manipulating the economy. In the streets, demagogues like Karl Lueger, the mayor of Vienna, won elections by openly exploiting anti-Jewish sentiment. Hitler, unemployed and embittered, absorbed it all. When the First World War broke out in 1914, Hitler found purpose in the German army. The defeat that followed in 1918 shattered that purpose. The humiliation of the Treaty of Versailles, the collapse of the German Empire, and the chaos of the Weimar Republic created fertile ground for conspiracy. In beer halls and pamphlets, voices whispered that Germany had not been defeated on the battlefield, but stabbed in the back by internal enemies: communists, socialists, and above all, Jews. Hitler seized on this myth with the zeal of a fanatic. He began to construct a worldview where Jews were not merely opponents, but a cosmic enemy. To him, they represented both capitalism and communism, the financier and the revolutionary. A contradictory but effective fiction. He saw history as a biological struggle between races, where survival depended on purity and dominance. These ideas, borrowed from distorted interpretations of Darwinism and popular racial theories of the time, became the foundation of his ideology. In this warped universe, the Jew was not a human being but a parasite, an infection, a disease, threatening the health of the German nation. When Hitler joined the German Workers' Party in 1919, later renamed the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nazi Party, he brought with him this worldview. In his speeches, he transformed personal obsession into mass persuasion. His words promised redemption, unity, and greatness, but always through the elimination of an enemy. To a nation in despair, his message was intoxicating. The Jews became the scapegoat for everything Germany had suffered: inflation, unemployment, moral decay, and defeat. In 1925, from his prison cell after the failed beer hall putsch, Hitler dictated Mein Kampf. Within its pages, he laid bare his hatred. "By defending myself against the Jew," he wrote, "I'm fighting for the work of the Lord." To Hitler, the persecution of the Jews was not merely political, it was spiritual, almost divine. He saw himself as an instrument of historical destiny, chosen to cleanse the world of what he viewed as corruption. By the time he came to power in 1933, Hitler's ideas had metastasized into state policy. Within months, Jews were purged from civil service, academia, and the arts. The Nazi regime used propaganda to portray Jews as corrupt, greedy, and subhuman. Posters, films, and children's books carried the message that to be a good German was to reject the Jew. One of the most infamous propaganda films, Der ewige Jude, The Eternal Jew, depicted Jewish people as rats spreading disease. The imagery was deliberate. It primed an entire generation to view mass murder as pest control. The Nuremberg laws of 1935 stripped Jews of citizenship and banned marriage or sexual relations between Jews and Aryans. These laws were not merely legal mechanisms. They were social weapons, designed to isolate Jews from every aspect of public life. Children were taunted in schools, businesses boycotted, synagogues desecrated. Every insult, every restriction was a step toward dehumanization. Hitler's obsession deepened as Germany prepared for war. He believed that the struggle against international Jewry was inseparable from the struggle for world domination. In his mind, the Second World War was not just a war of nations, but a war of races. When Germany invaded Poland in 1939, the violence against Jews escalated dramatically. Jewish men were shot in the streets, women and children were herded into ghettos, sealed-off districts where starvation, disease, and brutality became instruments of control. Inside these ghettos, Warsaw, Lodz, Krakow, families lived 10 to a room. Smuggling food became a capital crime. Those who resisted were executed on the spot. The ghettos were never meant to be permanent. They were holding pens for what came next. In June 1941, Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. It was in the vast fields and forests of Eastern Europe that the Holocaust began in earnest. Behind the front lines, special SS units known as Einsatzgruppen followed the army. Their mission was simple: to kill. They rounded up Jews, communists, and so-called undesirables, forced them to dig their own graves, and shot them by the thousands. In places like Babi Yar, near Kiev, over 33,000 Jews were massacred in just 2 days. Yet even mass shootings proved too slow, too inefficient. The Nazi leadership sought a final solution. At the Wannsee Conference in January 1942, senior officials gathered to coordinate the systematic extermination of Europe's Jews. Trains began to roll, thousands of them, carrying human cargo to camps built for one purpose: death. Auschwitz, Treblinka, Sobibor, Belzec, names that would forever define the boundaries of human evil. Inside the camps, industrial killing replaced gunfire. Zyklon B gas was used to murder entire families in chambers disguised as showers. Their bodies were burned in crematoria, their belongings sorted, catalogued, and sent back to Germany. The logic was chillingly bureaucratic. To the Nazi machine, the destruction of a people had become an administrative process. Even as Germany's war fortunes collapsed, Hitler's hatred did not waver. In his final days, hidden in the Berlin bunker, he raved that the Jews were responsible for Germany's defeat. He ordered the destruction of what remained of his own nation, declaring that if the German people failed him, they too should perish. His last political testament, written hours before his suicide in April 1945, still blamed international Jewry for the war. Even in death, he could not escape his own delusion. But Hitler's personal hatred was only part of the story. The Holocaust was not the act of one man alone. It required millions of ordinary participants. Bureaucrats, soldiers, guards, neighbors. It was the product of a society conditioned to obedience, fear, and prejudice. Many Germans looked away, others profited. Some believed they were doing their patriotic duty. The true horror of the Holocaust lies not only in the scale of death, but in the banality of its execution. So why did Hitler persecute the Jews? Because his entire worldview demanded it. His ideology needed an enemy to justify power, to unify the people through hate, to explain defeat, and to rationalize conquest. The Jews became the ultimate symbol of everything he despised: the cosmopolitan, the intellectual, the outsider. In destroying them, he believed he was purifying the world. In truth, he was destroying the very soul of Europe. The legacy of that hatred echoes still. 6 million Jews, men, women, and children, were murdered. Entire communities, languages, and cultures vanished. The Holocaust stands as both a warning and a question. How could such a thing happen in a society of poets, scientists, and philosophers? How did reason give way to madness so complete? The answer lies in the slow, deliberate normalization of hate, the transformation of prejudice into policy and of ideology into annihilation. When the war ended and the camps were liberated, the world saw what Hitler's hatred had wrought. Piles of shoes, gold teeth, and human ashes told a story that words could not. But the question remains: how many looked away before it was too late? Understanding why Hitler persecuted the Jews is not about understanding him. It's about understanding how hate becomes power and how silence becomes complicity. If history teaches anything, it's that no ideology, no nation, no leader is immune to the temptation of scapegoating the vulnerable. The seeds of such evil are sown in ordinary minds long before they bear their poisonous fruit. What do you think is the most important lesson the world has failed to learn from the Holocaust? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this video insightful, remember to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell for more deep explorations of history's darkest chapters. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.